When the Supreme Court took up the review petition in the Rafale case about whether their decision to dismiss a CBI inquiry into the deal to buy 36 Rafale jets from France should be reviewed or not, the Attorney General presented brand new arguments in the case. First, taking a cue from the recent airstrike against Pakistan, K.K. Venugopal, our country's top law officer, said that Rafale was needed, although MiG-21 of the 60s performed beautifully against F-16. He said that we need Rafale to defend a country from F-16 fighter planes that recently bombed us, and without the Rafale, how can we resist them? Then he also went on to build a case against the series of explosive news reports that have been done by the Hindu newspaper and its editor NRAM, who again ran a story today revealing how the UPA deal with its bank guarantees was cheaper than the NDA deal. The court said they couldn't go into any of this new information that was being exposed by the Hindu. Remember, the Congress has been saying that their petition for a CBI investigation was thrown out because the Supreme Court wasn't given all this new information. But when the petitioners tried to push this, the Attorney General said that the documents were stolen and the court could not look into such documents because of this source. He also said that they were considering action against the Official Secrets Act, which carries with it punishment up to 14 years. But the court didn't seem to be convinced by them. Just look at their responses. Chief Justice of India, Ranjan Gogoi, said, if an accused steals a document and shows it on the basis of which he is acquitted, is that document to be relied or not? Then you had Justice Joseph responding. He said, should the principle proponed by the Attorney General be applied in the Bofors case? That's, of course, the scam from the 80s, which, incidentally, NRAM also exposed and which led to the fall of the Rajiv Gandhi government. So Justice Joseph said, can that case also be shut out? He went on to say, if an act of corruption is committed, the government can't take shelter under national security claim. Even stolen evidence can be looked into by the court. It is well settled under the Evidence Act. So the court was very clear that the arguments being made by the centre didn't really convince them. So what does this all add up to? And is the source of the document really the biggest issue right now? We'll be talking about that to our special panel, which will be joining us in just a bit. But first, let's just speak to the man of the moment, the Hindus NRAM. Thank you, sir, very much for joining us here on NDTV. I want to raise some of those questions with you. First of all, I wanted to ask you, how did you respond to the kind of arguments that were being raised by the Attorney General in court in response to the Hindus' expose?
See, since I was not privy to all that was said, I got reports. I saw it on TV. I saw what was going on TV channels and in the press. But let me say this, we did not steal any documents. We did not pay for any stolen documents. And we are very clear, I'm very clear that what we published, there have been 5 investigative articles in this series, the latest being R5 about the bank guarantees, which you just mentioned, you reported. We published this because they are in the public interest. We published it. It became an investigative story because this information was withheld from the public realm. It was withheld from Parliament. It was not submitted to the Supreme Court, as far as I know, although we don't know exactly what was submitted in the seal cover. This information should be public. There's nothing that argues against putting it out in the public realm. Issues like price, the price of a fully fitted combat-ready aircraft. That is our first story. There's nothing that says you shouldn't have information on parallel negotiations when the Indian negotiating position taken clearly by the Indian negotiating team, INT, was allegedly undercut or undermined, according to a Defense Ministry note strongly endorsed by the then Defense Secretary, G. Mohan Kumar, using the word, it undermines our position seriously. Thirdly, the waiver of anti-corruption clauses, I think, was very serious. The turning down of a very sensible, practical proposal to have an escrow account to be operated by the French government and under terms and conditions agreed by both governments. The money should be paid in this because 60% of the money was advance payments to be made 18 months before the first Rafale fighter jet would arrive in September of 2019. No sovereign guarantee, no government guarantee, not even bank guarantees. And then there was dissent. 3 of the domain experts on the the 7-member Indian negotiating team opposed strenuously. To their credit, they took a very firm stand. And the whole INT pressed the French to the extent possible, but they were undercut by this parallel track in which officials of the PMO and also the National Security Advisor participated. All this is relevant because what is the integrity of the decision-making process? Was India taken for a ride by the French side, by the commercial companies in particular? Was the standard defense procurement procedure followed? Why were these deviations?
Sure.
Why have you hidden it from the public? This is what we put out.
Sure.
And how does it attract the Official Secrets Act?
Yes, and about the Official Secrets Act, I wanted to ask you, we've seen it being used against several journalists in the past. We've seen it being used against journalist Iftikhar Gilani and other people as well. And it is very stringent. It carries punishment up to 3 to 14 years. Now, I know that you said that you'll continue, you won't reveal your sources, but is this something that can be used to intimidate, and what is the kind of impact that these kind of arguments about wielding the OSA has on journalists?
I don't know if this, what has been described as this threat was said in the heat of the moment. That's why, since I wasn't there, or represents official policy. But assuming it represents some kind of policy, it will certainly send a message out there, a much larger message than one concerning the Hindu, for me, so to the journalists, because then it creates a chilling effect for any kind of investigative journalism, which relates to not just so-called national security, but any kind of government policy, because you can always take cover under, national security or the integrity and sovereignty of the country and so forth. I don't think our laws permit it. We are fully protected, as far as I know. I really believe this, by Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution of India, freedom of speech and expression. And we are also protected by the Right to Information Act, specifically 8(1)(i) and 8(2), which override the Official Secrets Act of 1923, which is really an obnoxious and repressive piece of legislation, which was enacted to protect the interests of the British Raj against the people of India and against the freedom movement itself. So I don't think there is any real live threat here, and we don't know how it will play in the Supreme Court when the case has been adjourned till the 14th of March. But one thing I can say, we are absolutely justified in publishing this information. Precisely, investigative journalism comes into play only when information that should be in the public realm is not there, or is consciously suppressed, or there's a cover-up. That's when you and I have a chance.
That's right.
Sunetra, to do investigative journalism. And it's our duty, I think, provided the issue is relevant, and in this case, highly relevant and of public interest. That's how I see it. And I repeat, we are absolutely committed to protecting the identity of the sources. Nothing can make me or us reveal the names or identity of these sources. Let the sources be absolutely assured on this, let everyone understand it. And fortunately in India, I think you can't really be forced to reveal your sources.
And Ram, thank you so much for sharing that with us, and good luck with this particular thing in court. Thanks very much for speaking to us. Okay, so let's just get in more people to talk about this. We have in studio Madhu Trehan, who's the editor-in-chief of News Laundry, which looks at media coverage of this. We also have joining us Justice B.A. Khan and Niranjan Shetty as well. Madhu Trehan, you just heard what N. Ram has said. What's also significant, just to add to what he said, What's significant about this is that while NRAM is saying that, this is something which the RTI completely negates Official Secrets Act, and yet even in the recent past, we've seen the Official Secrets Act being invoked several times. We've seen Iftikhar Gilani, we've seen other journalists who were all, I must point out to our viewers as well, who were all later acquitted, but they were hauled up in jail invoking the Official Secrets Act. So one of the things that NRAM said was, the documents that we have aren't stolen. I wanted to ask you as a journalist, even if something's stolen, does it matter? Does the source of a document matter?
As long as the source is correct, as long as the source is genuine, I think it doesn't matter how they got it. And the whole point is, as Justice Joseph said in court today, he said, does it mean wherever they got it from, that the court will not look at the documents? Of course they'll look at the documents. So they can't, the Attorney General or the government cannot stop the Supreme Court from looking at the governments. And Justice Joseph brought up the Evidence Act, saying that it doesn't matter where the evidence comes from, they will look at the evidence. So I think the Hindu, NRAM, and journalists are within their rights to source whatever documents they want, if it is obviously for the public good. And I think the most disturbing thing that I am noticing is that supporters of the present government are going so far as to defend this government in a way that, why are you asking questions? So when you've got a populace that is saying, don't ask questions, why are journalists asking questions? Why are they being so nosy? Journalists have lost, there's a disconnect that journalists are representing, in some sense, the questioning voice of the people, because we have a right to know, the people have a right to know. The journalist is not asking for his personal benefit. He's not going home to gossip. He's going to publish it, and that publishing means that the people get to know. So when people are objecting about this, don't ask, they keep saying, don't ask questions, why are you asking questions, leave the government, they should know better. I think that is the most frightening and dangerous trend, because
especially because they're invoking nationalism. In fact, we saw that argument being used
exactly.
in court as well.
And the problem here is that people have forgotten that all the scams that, while calling journalists names, all the scams that have come out in the public from Bofors onwards, even from Nehru's Jeep scam, Krishna Menon's Jeep scam, right from that time, everything has come out through journalists and from journalism. So let's not forget that this is our role. We have a right, not only a right, it is our duty to ask the questions. And if the Hindu got these documents and the Supreme Court has admitted them, whatever the Attorney General Venugopal said today was basically that they were going to prosecute these two organizations.
Yes.
Which is basically कि डर लगा दो, सबको डरा के बैठ जाओ.
Yeah. And
that I think is really gives you an inclination of where this government is at.
But what's also interesting is that the Attorney General trying to distinguish between stolen and the right channels of documents. And what's interesting is that if you look at two scams, you talked about the fact that all scams have been through various journalists from their sources. What's interesting is the 2G scam is through the right to information documents that one got through them. So it's official channels. But the coal scam is that we got an early version through sources. People got, journalists, I think it was the Times of India, got an early copy of the CAG report, and that's how the scam actually came about.
In fact, nobody ever got to know how Prashant Bhushan got those documents. It was never declared.
Exactly.
And the court didn't ask. I don't recall the court asking, what are your sources?
Exactly.
So whatever it is, the sources are not the question. The question is, are you questioning the documents? Are the documents fake? Are they genuine? If obviously they are genuine, otherwise the Attorney General wouldn't be objecting to them.
Right. So Niranjan,
and what are they hiding? Why can't they just come clean?
Okay. Niranjan Shetty, Madhu Trayan wants to know, what are they hiding? Why don't you come clean? And the fact that you heard what the justices said, you heard what Justice Joseph said, and also what the Chief Justice of India said, it seems that the centre's arguments don't seem to have worked at all.
Yeah, first of all, I haven't what Mr. Justice Joseph has said, but what I could understand and read, or while coming, what I could understand what Madhu ma'am is trying to speak. First of all, let me make it clear, the government is not getting scared of anything. But whatever the facts, she should understand whenever it is before any court, we have to come with the clean hands and present all the things that are in actual position. Now, if our Attorney General has spoken that things have been stolen, that should not be taken as that we are trying to hide. These are the facts what our Attorney General tried to bring before the court. Now, if you take it as that we are trying to hide, something, and probably like Mr.
But sir,
N. Ram spoke, that these are the, let me appreciate. We understand that the journalist has a role, they have the part to play as far as investigation is concerned, and that is where they come. There is no doubt about it. But what we want to say is, let it be there again. Now, almost everything has been sidelined. Now, again, filing a review petition, we understand what is the interest of Mr. Prashant Bhushan. Is it not a political motivated review petition? Should we not look into that?
But sir, he's not talking about the motive of Prashant Bhushan.
No,
what we heard the Attorney General say was, look at the motives of the journalists. Sir, just hear me out.
I'm not
the
speaking
motives
about
of the journalists and their source.
I think on
and
the
don't
fourth,
you think
let's
the
wait
fact that Bofors,
let's
these are
wait
the same journalists who exposed the Bofors scam,
let's wait till the 14th of January when the next hearing will be there.
14th
we know that
March.
the present, let the Chief Justice decide on the 14th March when the next hearing will be there.
Okay,
but at present, when we are arguing on certain whether the government of the day is scared of...
Let's talk about a different aspect then. If you are not convinced by that, let's talk about a different aspect. One of the other things that was mentioned today was the Attorney General using the argument about the efficacy and the need for Rafale and the deal by saying that it's essential to fight F-16. First of all, Madhur Rehan, your comments on that. The fact that this became one of the arguments in court as well. I'll come to you, sir. I'll first get a comment. About the Attorney General using the Rafale and saying that it's essential to fight the F-16.
Well, the court told him that it had nothing to do with the petition that was in the court. So, in fact, pointed out that stick to the petition that's in the court. So, this is again this emotional blackmail, because everybody is in this heightened fervor of nationalism and also supporting the army, which of course most, I would say 99.9 except for one person of one republic, I think everyone supports the army. So the court has given their answer in this, that do not bring the necessity of the Rafale fighters in this. That is not the issue. The issue over here is basically this petition, which is the letter that the Hindu published, which was that why are there two, the question to ask is, why were there two parallel negotiations going on, one from the PMO's office and one from the Defense Ministry. And the letter was about that, listen, the two Defense Secretary is writing this letter saying that the parallel investigation, negotiation is causing weakness in our negotiating, so please stop the parallel thing. Now that I think is very interesting, that why are there two parallel negotiations going on?
But isn't it also interesting the fact that court said right at the beginning, perhaps because it's a review petition, that they can't take into account all these revelations being made in any case, because they're saying we don't need any new evidence, we're not placing that into account. So that means that none of the things that the Congress have been saying and the Hindus' reports, they won't be considered.
I'm not sure about that, because what the petition was basically about that document, and the Attorney General was saying that that document should be discarded. Now the contents of that document also can't be discarded, and the contents contain this, that there were two parallel negotiations going on. The question which I think citizens are entitled to know the answer to this, that why were there two parallel negotiations going on? Why, if the Defense Ministry is carrying it on, why is the PMO involved? I think that's a valid question, and I think they can give a very simple answer. I don't think it's so complicated. Instead of hiding from the answer, just give an answer, even if it's a cover-up, I don't care. But you have to get used to answering journalists and answering citizens.
Especially because of the kind of confusion that was there by the previous report, which had redacted parts.
So why are they running away from giving answers?
Right, talked about a CAG
give any
report
answer,
before
but give
it was
an
filed.
answer. But they're taking a position, we will not give answers, you're not entitled to know, you don't have to know anything, whether it's about the surgical strikes or whether it's how many people died in Pakistan after the strikes. There is this attitude that we will not tell you, we will only tell you what we want to. Now, I think citizens are entitled to know. So it would kill the rumors, it would kill the gossip, it would kill the incorrect information floating around. I think it's very simple. Give out the information.
So, Niranjan Shetty, why is it that such arguments are being used in court? The court as...
that is what I would
about
go with
the
what
F-16,
Madhu
sir.
ma'am is
Why
speaking.
is such a political argument about the F-16s being raised by the Attorney General? Can you answer me that?
Why shouldn't it be? Why shouldn't it be? Now, has not the Congress sacrificed the defense just because their middlemen could not get the deal on their, as per their request? Now, is it not that we should bring before the court? Aren't they trying to malign the present government who's gone into buying the Rafale deal? What stopped them?
But sir,
what
again,
stopped
this
them
was
from buying the
dismissed.
Rafale during their tenure? Hasn't they sacrificed the army and the defense? Is it not the question?
They
that
may
it
have,
is
but
before
that's
the
not
nation?
the issue in court.
But the question is,
No,
Mr. Shetty...
let it be. No. So,
Right.
apart from that, now you have to also agree a closed envelope, a clear closed envelope was also handed over to the Chief Justice then. Hasn't he opened that envelope till date? Every details has been shared with him. So,
The
I
question
don't
is
think
the
so.
public
Even in
needs to
case
know
of
as
review
well, sir.
petition, it is the same thing. So, it is the judge now, it is the responsibility of the judge to decide and come to the conclusion. So, I think during that on 14th of March, since Mr. Prashant Bhushan has filed a review petition, it
Right.
goes naturally before the same judges.
Mr.
So, he
Shetty.
will use his...
Mr. Shetty, I have a very simple question. First of all, when he talked about the OSA, when he argued about the authenticity or the source of the documents, that didn't seem to convince the judges who brought up this entire issue about Bofors, who said that it's about the truth and what it reveals. The second point I'm asking you is about the F-16s. Even that, the court seems to believe, had nothing to do with the current issue. Why is it that such peripheral matters are being brought up in court by the centre?
It's not peripheral matter. Whenever any kind of judgment has to be brought before the justice, we have to refer some kind of observations or of the past debate that has happened. Naturally, as far as Bofors was concerned, it was not the Indian news channel or the journalists who had bought before the citizens of India. It was the Swedish journalist who has bought. So basically, and that too 1 year after that, all our channels had come on. So there was some interest behind it when it was been bought. So you need to understand. Presently also we understand the political, Mr. Prashant Bhushan has been given the responsibility to malign the government. There is not a single case of
But
corruption
sir, we're talking
against
about
this
a
NDA
newspaper,
government.
independent
But yes,
newspaper.
they are trying to frame in such a mind that this NDA government has some corruption and go into the masses during the election. That is what this review petition is all for.
Okay, I wanted to ask you
That's
because
possible. He might be right, but that's not the point here. The point, what is in court, is not what the Congress is doing. The issue over here is that Hindu got the newspaper, the Hindu got the documents, and the Attorney General is talking about just that. That's the issue.
I wanted to ask you before we end that one of the things is that the Second Administrative Reforms Commission had actually recommended that the Official Secrets Act, especially because we have the 2005, the Right to Information Act being brought in, which talks about transparency. And this seemed to be in conflict, so they said that the 1923 Official Secrets Act should be repealed, that it's antiquated and unsuitable to emerging needs, that the Act nurtures culture of secrecy, non-disclosure. And yet, governments, after it was the UPA and then the NDA as well, nobody has repealed this particular act. Is it because it's very, very important for them to use against all of us?
Yeah, they do use it. There are journalists who have cases filed against them under this act, which are going on for the last 10, 15 years. But I think whether you repeal it or not, there are enough laws in any case to stop journalists from getting stories out. There are enough laws to scare journalists that cases will be filed against you for this, that and these. So I think a lot of these laws, as you know, were written by the British against Indian natives from rebelling against colonial rule, and our esteemed forefathers wrote the constitution based on that. So I think a lot of these laws do keep us down.
They keep us down, but obviously reporters and with the help of their sources will continue digging, and this story is not going to die down. Thanks very much, Madhu Trehan and Niranjan Shetty, for joining us. And that's it on Reality Check.